The breaking point. The grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly stretched upward like a crystalline cathedral, its walls reflecting the light of 1,000 stars. Representatives from 43 species filled the curved rows of seats, their forms ranging from the delicate gossamer-winged ethereals to the massive silicon-based chronari. At the center of it all, the Vorthon delegation sat in their elevated platform, their purple-scaled faces showing the same expression they always wore when humans spoke, barely concealed contempt mixed with amusement. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the speaker's podium, her jaw tight with controlled frustration. She had been making the same argument for 3 hours now, and the assembly still treated her words like the amusing prattle of a child. Behind her, the rest of the human delegation sat in tense silence. Ambassador Marcus Webb, Captain Yuki Tanaka, and Defense Coordinator James Okonkwo all wore the same expression of barely contained anger. The raider attacks on our outer colonies have increased by 300% in the last 6 months, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. We have lost 4 mining stations and 2 agricultural colonies. 12,000 human lives. We need the Assembly's support to patrol the border regions effectively. High Chancellor Vexthan of the Vorthon Empire raised one of his forearms in what his species considered a dismissive gesture. His voice resonated through the chamber with the artificial amplification his people love to use, making every word sound like a pronouncement from on high. Commander Chen, we have discussed this matter extensively. The raiders target your colonies because humans insist on settling dangerous frontier regions. Perhaps if your species chose safer locations, as we have advised numerous times, these unfortunate incidents would not occur. The condescension in his tone made Sarah's hands clench into fists. The Vorthons had controlled the Galactic Assembly for over 2 centuries, using their advanced technology and vast fleet to maintain their position as the galaxy's self-appointed guardians. They viewed humans who had only achieved faster-than-light travel 40 years ago as barely civilized newcomers who needed constant supervision. Safe locations, Sarah repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. You mean the resource-poor systems you've designated for us? The places with no strategic value, no minerals worth mining, no planets suitable for large-scale colonization. You want us to remain dependent on trade with established species for everything we need to survive. A ripple of whispers went through the assembly. The insectoid chattery clicked their mandibles in what might have been amusement or disapproval. The aquatic nereids floated in their water-filled observation tanks, their bioluminescent skin flashing in patterns that suggested interest, but none of them spoke up. None of them ever did when the Vorthons were involved. Chancellor Vexthan's scales shifted to a darker purple, a sign of irritation. Humanity has been part of this assembly for less than 2 decades. You have much to learn about galactic civilization. These frontier regions you insist on colonizing have been marked as hazardous for good reasons. The raiders who trouble you are a natural consequence of venturing where you should not. Sarah felt something snap inside her. 20 years of being treated like children. 20 years of being told they weren't ready, weren't civilized enough, weren't worthy of equal treatment. 20 years of watching their people die while the assembly did nothing, because humans were expendable, because they came from a death world and were therefore somehow less deserving of protection. A natural consequence, she said, her voice rising. Is that what you called it when the ethereals were attacked 50 years ago? When raiders destroyed their colony on Celestia Prime, your fleet responded within hours. When the Chitauri trade routes were threatened 30 years ago, you established permanent patrol bases. But when humans die, it's a natural consequence. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant hum of the atmospheric processors seemed to quiet. Chancellor Vexthan rose from his seat, all 8 feet of him towering over the assembly. Commander Chen, you forget yourself. The ethereals and Chitauri had proven themselves worthy of protection through centuries of peaceful contribution to galactic society. Humanity has been here for a mere moment in cosmic terms, and already you demand equal treatment to species who have earned their place through millennia of civilization. Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every species representative. Some looked away. Others watched with interest. A few, she noticed, seemed sympathetic but unwilling to speak. The Tersaki ambassador's feathers ruffled in what she had learned was a sign of discomfort. The synthetic consciousness representing the digital collective flickered in what might have been agreement with her words. But still none of them spoke. You want proof that we're worthy? Sarah asked, her voice carrying through the chamber. Fine. Let me tell you what happened 6 days ago while we were waiting for this assembly to convene. The raiders hit our colony on New Siberia, 400 families, mostly farmers and miners. The colony sent a distress signal to the nearest assembly patrol base, which was under Vorthan command. Do you know what response they received, Chancellor? Vexthon's scales shifted again, but he said nothing. Sarah continued, her voice hard as steel. The patrol commander, Sub-Chancellor Grixtar, informed them that the colony was outside standard patrol routes and that they should have known the risks when they settled there. 400 families. Chancellor, children, elderly, the colony's defense. Volunteers held out for 18 hours with hunting rifles and mining equipment while your patrol ship sat 30 light minutes away and did nothing. Ambassador Webb stood up behind her, his weathered face grim. They all died, Chancellor. Every last one of them. The colony's final transmission was a recording of children singing to keep their spirits up, while the raiders broke through their last defensive barrier. Would you like me to play it for the assembly? The offer hung in the air like a challenge. Several species representatives shifted uncomfortably. The ethereal's wings dimmed, their species' sign of distress. The Chronari's massive form rumbled with what might have been disapproval, though whether directed at humans or Vorthans was unclear. Chancellor Vexthon's forearms spread in what his species considered a gesture of reasoned explanation. Regrettable, but this proves our point. Humans consistently overestimate their capabilities. You settle worlds you cannot defend, then expect others to bear the cost of your poor decisions. The galaxy operated in harmony for millennia, before humanity emerged from your death world. Perhaps you should consider whether you are truly ready for the responsibilities of interstellar civilization. That was the moment everything changed. Sarah felt the shift in the air, the collective intake of breath from the human delegation. She turned to look at Ambassador Webb, who gave her a single slight nod. They had discussed this possibility, hoped it wouldn't come to this, but they had prepared for it nonetheless. Sarah turned back to face the assembly, her posture straight and her voice clear. The United Earth Coalition has reached a decision. Effective immediately, we are withdrawing from the Galactic Assembly. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. The Chitauri's clicking reached a crescendo. The Nerids flashed rapid patterns of alarm. The ethereals took flight in agitation, circling the upper reaches of the chamber. Even the normally stoic Chronari shifted with surprise. Chancellor Vexthon's scales turned almost white, a sign of shock among his people. You cannot be serious. Without the Assembly's protection, what protection? Sarah interrupted, her voice cutting through the chaos. You've made it abundantly clear that we're on our own anyway. At least now we can respond to threats without waiting for permission from those who see us as nothing more than primitive Deathworlders, playing at civilization. The digital collective's representative suddenly materialized in the center of the chamber, its holographic form crackling with energy. The humans raise valid concerns about differential treatment within the Assembly. This unit has observed similar patterns in 17 separate incidents over the past solar cycle. For the first time, other voices began to rise. The Tersaki ambassador stood, his feathers fully extended. The digital collective speaks truth. The Assembly has become less about mutual protection and more about maintaining existing power structures. Chancellor Vexthon raised all four arms for silence. This is absurd. Humanity cannot survive without the Assembly's trade networks, our technology exchanges, our navigation databases. You would condemn your species to isolation and extinction out of pride. Captain Tanaka stood up, her voice calm and professional. With respect, Chancellor, humanity survived on a death world for 300,000 years before we reached the stars. We fought ice ages, plagues, predators, and each other. We split the atom before we had computers. We reached our moon with slide rules and determination. We don't need your protection. We never did. We joined the Assembly because we believed in cooperation and mutual respect. Since we've received neither, we see no reason to continue. The human delegation began to file out of the chamber. As they reached the door, Sarah turned back one last time. For the record, Chancellor, those raiders who have been attacking our colonies, we've been tracking them. We know where their bases are. We know their supply lines. We know who's been funding them. We followed your rules and didn't act because the Assembly protocols demanded evidence and committee approval for military action. Those restrictions no longer apply to us. She paused, meeting Vexthon's eyes directly. You called us Deathworlders like it was an insult. You're about to learn why everyone else in the galaxy should have seen it as a warning. The Reckoning. 3 weeks after humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Assembly, space around the raider base designated Target Alpha looked empty. The pirates had chosen their location well. A rogue asteroid field between systems, difficult to navigate, easier to defend than attack. The base itself was built into a massive asteroid, shields and weapons hidden beneath tons of rock and metal. It had stood unconquered for 60 years, a thorn in the side of dozens of species, protected by its location and by unspoken agreements with certain powerful interests who benefited from the chaos it caused. Captain Diana Rodriguez floated in the command center of the UES Vengeance, watching the tactical display with Predator's eyes. Around her, the crew worked in efficient silence, their movements economical in the zero gravity. Humanity's ships were different from those of other species. Where the Vorthans built massive dreadnoughts that fought at extreme range, where the Ethereals constructed elegant vessels that danced through space like butterflies, humans built hunters. Fast, aggressive, and designed to operate in conditions that would kill most other species. All ships report ready, Captain, her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Park, reported. The asteroid field is playing havoc with sensors as expected. They won't see us until we're right on top of them. Diana smiled, a cold expression that would have terrified anyone who saw it. Remind all ships, and we're not following assembly engagement protocols. No warnings, no attempts to communicate, no requests for surrender until after we've defanged them. These bastards killed 12,000 of our people. Today we return the favor. The human fleet was small by galactic standards. 12 destroyers, 4 cruisers, and 1 battleship. The Vengeance herself. But each ship was crewed by people who had evolved on a world where the gravity was crushing by galactic standards, where the radiation would cook most species alive, where the weather alone killed millions before humanity conquered it. The high-G maneuvers that would turn most species into paste were merely uncomfortable for human crews. Execute Operation Guillotine, Diana ordered. The human ships burst from concealment simultaneously, accelerating at rates that should have been impossible for vessels their size. They didn't approach in formation like civilized fleets. They came in like a wolf pack, each ship targeting vulnerable points, using the asteroid field that should have protected the base as cover for their approach. The raider base's alarms screamed to life, but it was already too late. The first human missiles were already impacting their shield generators, not with the elegant energy weapons favored by most species, but with kinetic kill vehicles, simple chunks of metal accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. The shields designed to disperse energy weapons crumpled like tissue paper. Inside the Galactic Assembly chambers, an emergency session had been called. Chancellor Vexton stood before a holographic display showing the attack in real time, his scales flickering through colors of disbelief. This is impossible. That base has stood for decades. The asteroid field alone should prevent any coordinated assault. The Digital Collective's representative flickered into existence. The humans are not conducting a coordinated assault by standard parameters. Each ship is operating independently, making decisions in real time. They are using the asteroid field's interference to mask their movements, flying through spaces that would be considered navigationally impossible by standard safety protocols. On the display, they watched as human destroyers wove between asteroids at speeds that made even watching dangerous. One destroyer, the UES Relentless, actually scraped along an asteroid's surface using its mining laser, a tool, not a weapon by galactic standards, to carve through a raider gun emplacement. The Tersaki ambassador's feathers were fully extended in alarm. They're not fighting like a military force. They're fighting like predators, the Chronari representative rumbled, and for the first time there was something like respect in its voice. They are fighting like pack hunters who have cornered prey. Back at Target Alpha, Captain Rodriguez watched as her fleet systematically destroyed the raider base's defenses. The pirates tried to launch fighters, but human point defense systems designed to track and destroy debris in Earth's cluttered orbital space picked them off with contemptuous ease. The raiders tried to run, but human ships were already behind them, having used gravity slingshots around asteroids to build impossible velocities. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the raider base, the communications officer reported. They're requesting terms of surrender. Diana's expression didn't change. Did they accept surrender from New Siberia? From the mining station at Kepler 442? From any of the 12,000 people they slaughtered? No, sir. Then they can burn. Continue the attack. The Vorthon Empire's response came 12 hours after the last raider had been eliminated. A fleet of 40 ships led by Chancellor Vexithan himself arrived at the edge of human space. It was a show of force meant to remind humanity of their place. The Vorthon ships were works of art, massive vessels with sleek lines and weapons that could crack moons. They found the human fleet waiting for them. Admiral Jennifer Walsh stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's newest battleship. Around her, 30 human vessels held position. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and by all conventional logic they should have been retreating. Instead, they were broadcasting on all frequencies. Chancellor Vexthan, Admiral Walsh's voice was calm, professional. You are entering sovereign human space without authorization. You have 30 seconds to reverse course or we will consider this an act of war. The response came immediately, Vexthan's voice dripping with outrage. You dare threaten the Vorthon Empire? We are here to restore order, to bring humanity back under appropriate supervision. Your attack on the raider base, while those criminals deserve justice, violated 17 assembly protocols. You will stand down and accept assembly arbitration. Walsh's response was simple. 15 seconds, Chancellor. On the Vorthon flagship, Vexthan's scales turned deep purple with rage. All ships prepare to... He never finished the sentence. Every human ship vanished from sensors simultaneously, their heat signatures disappearing as they dumped coolant and went dark. The Vorthon fleet's sophisticated sensors, designed to track energy signatures across vast distances, suddenly found themselves blind. Where did they go? Vexthan demanded. 40 ships cannot simply disappear. His answer came in the form of impacts, not energy weapons, but simple projectiles. Mass driver rounds invisible to sensors that weren't calibrated to track unpowered objects. The human ships had gone dark and were firing purely ballistic weapons, using mathematics and predictive algorithms to target Vorthon vessels that couldn't see them coming. The Vorthon shields held, but the psychological impact was devastating. They were being hunted by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't track, couldn't understand. Ships started firing randomly, hoping to hit something, anything. 2 Vorthon vessels collided in the confusion, their crews panicking. Then the human ships reappeared, but not where they had been. They had used the sensor blackout to reposition, surrounding the Vorthon fleet. Each human vessel had picked a target and was accelerating toward it at speeds that would mean certain death if they didn't pull away at the last second. They're going to ram us, someone screamed on the Vorthon bridge. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Vexthan ordered, but it was chaos. The Vorthon fleet, used to stately battles at extreme range, scattered like startled birds. Ships nearly collided with each other, trying to avoid the incoming humans. At the last possible second, the human ships pulled away. Their message clear. We could have destroyed you, and you couldn't have stopped us. Admiral Walsh's image appeared on every screen in the Vorthon fleet. Chancellor, you came here with 40 ships to intimidate us. We've demonstrated with 30 that numbers mean nothing if you don't have the will to use them. We are no longer asking for your respect. We are no longer seeking your approval. We are telling you clearly and simply, leave human space. Do not come back. Do not interfere with our colonies. Do not pretend you have authority over us. She paused, letting her words sink in. We evolved on a death world, Chancellor. We spent our entire history fighting for survival against a planet that wanted us dead. We united not in spite of our violent nature, but because of it. Because we learned that together we're more dangerous than apart. You've spent so long at the top of the food chain that you've forgotten what it's like to be prey. We haven't, we never will. The standoff lasted for 6 hours. Neither fleet fired a shot, but the tension was suffocating. Finally, slowly, the Vorthon fleet began to withdraw. As they reached the edge of human space, Chancellor Vexthan sent one final transmission. This is not over, Admiral. The Galactic Assembly will not tolerate this aggression. Walsh's response was swift. The Galactic Assembly tolerated the aggression against us for 20 years, Chancellor. We're simply speaking in a language you understand now. Strength. And, Chancellor, those raiders we destroyed were receiving Vorthon military surplus weapons. We have the proof. If you want to escalate this, we're prepared to present that evidence to every species in the galaxy. The threat hung between them. Unspoken, but clear. The raiders had been useful tools for keeping younger species in line, dependent on the established powers for protection. But humanity had broken the pattern. They had refused to play the game. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Other species began reaching out to humanity directly. bypassing the assembly. The Tersaki offered trade agreements. The digital collective shared navigation data. Even the reclusive Chronari sent a delegation. They had all seen what humanity was capable of when pushed, and more importantly, they had seen the Vorthon Empire back down. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, not through conquest or diplomacy, but through the simple refusal of one species to accept their assigned place. The Deathworlders had struck back, and in doing so, had changed everything. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood in his office on Luna Station, looking out at Earth below. Sarah Chen entered carrying a datapad with the latest reports. 17 species have requested independent trade agreements, she said. The assembly is in chaos. Vexton is facing challenges to his leadership for the first time in decades. Webb nodded slowly. We didn't want this fight, Sarah, but maybe it was inevitable. Maybe the galaxy needed to remember that respect isn't given. It's earned. Sarah joined him at the window, watching Earth turn slowly below them. What do you think happens now? Now? Webb smiled slightly. Now we build. We explore. We defend ourselves. We show the galaxy that Deathworlders have more to offer than just the ability to fight. But we also make sure they never forget that we can fight, and win when we need to. In the depths of space, human ships continued their patrols, no longer bound by assembly restrictions, no longer seeking permission to defend themselves. They had sent a message to the galaxy, written in the only language that power truly understood: strength, determination, and the absolute refusal to surrender. The Deathworlders had indeed struck back, and the galaxy would never be the same.